on button.
Where's the turn it on button? Welcome
Wait.
to the Lovecraft Using podcast, where apparently we have found the record button.
Do I have to accept this thing? What is?
The guy in Florida apparently found the turn it on button, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yes. Those of you who were here before we started recording will get that joke. The rest of you will wonder forever. What, Pete?
I just had to hit the accept button.
Okay.
For record. Never mind.
All
I'm
right.
just old.
There you
I don't-
have it.
Is Pete glitching or is the internet?
It's the universe
I think
glitching.
Pete's glitching. Yeah. Not his video, Pete himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. You know what? Let's do introductions. Cody Lakin is our guest today. Hey, Cody.
Hello.
Hey, buddy. We're going to introduce ourselves for anybody new, and then John and I and Bridget and Pete are going to grill you mercilessly. So,
No.
I mean, interview you. So, yeah, I'm Mike Davis with the Lovecraft Easing podcast and other projects. And Bridget.
Hey, I'm Bridget, composer and artist, musician, music horror
Extraordinaire.
lover.
Extraordinaire. Pete.
Yeah. I'm here. I'm Pete Rollick. Writer, editor, heroin addict.
X, that's not what I heard.
Yeah.
Methadone is not heroin.
Fair enough.
A person is either a heroin addict or they are not a heroin addict. There's no in between. The trick is to figure out which one you are and be that person.
Yeah. No.
Okay. Yeah. So what's your latest book? Tell the audience that again.
The latest book is Dorian Gray versus the Herbert West Reanimator, and apparently doing really, really well. It's a series. It's a collection of short stories by me and a couple other people, and we're pretty happy with it. It's some interesting ideas about what it means to be immortal or really long-lived, and the consequences of that, and how it can all go wrong.
Bridget, you got the Composaween thing going on, right? Do you want to briefly tell people where to go for that?
I
And
do
what it
have
is?
Composaween. Yeah, so third annual October challenge for anybody out there who likes to write music. I put some prompts lists on my Instagram, Babs the Composer. And for each Friday, the goal is to post a little piece that you've written. And it usually is a spooky theme, but however the theme speaks to you. And the goal is to just write some spooky music for October and share it with everybody. So when you post something, just put hashtag Babs Composaween, and then we can all listen to everybody's spooky music.
Yeah, if you're into horror soundtracks and so forth too, and even if you're not a composer,
Yeah.
It's neat to listen to.
Yeah, just follow hashtag Babs Composaween, because the more we get comments and likes and all that stuff too, the more the community can grow, which is the ultimate goal. So
Right. Hey, John, good to see you, buddy.
Hey, Mike. I'm John Langan. I write books. I'm really excited about Composaween, actually. I think that's like such a cool idea, because I think to myself, like, any soundtrack can be a horror soundtrack depending on what's happening in the foreground, you know.
That's
very
true.
true.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there was that. I can't remember what it was. There was a slasher film that used Tiptoe Through the Tulips.
Oh yeah.
Right. There's Kubrick uses what is it? Singing in the Rain in The Clockwork Orange.
Oh yeah.
To horrifying effect.
Yes.
Not to subvert it though. I want to hear some genuine creepy music.
Exactly. John, you've obviously got a lot of books out there. What's your latest one for those who may not know?
My latest collection is called Corpse Mouth and Other Autobiographies. It's available from all the usual evil empires, and also directly from the publisher, from Word Horde Press. Kelly Link liked it, and you don't want to make Kelly Link angry, So I would recommend, you know, do the right thing. Do the right thing.
Do the right thing. Yep. So Cody, hey, we're going to talk to you in a minute. I just have a couple of things to get out of the way first. Rick is fine, or he's okay. He hasn't been here in like a month, maybe 6 weeks. And so I was getting worried. All he said in the emails were, I can't make it. And when I got that today, I called him, and apparently he's just been working on a writing project, and, you know, he wants to get that done. But also this Sunday said he just got flu shots and COVID shots, and they're really, you know, taking a lot out of him. But he said he would be here next Sunday. For, I know longtime listeners, you know who Rick is, and I thought you might be wondering where he was. So that's the story on that. So in other news, my son's cat got out in the middle of the night last night. So we were up half the night looking for the cat, still haven't found him. And it's really rough. I wish it would even, I don't want to lose a cat, but I wish it would really even have been my favorite cat and not his, you know what I mean? So yeah, I just keep hoping we find him today. We're going to print out a bunch of flyers, so forth. Keep having this fantasy, because he's sleeping in late, Bridget, because we were up so much of the night, of Danielle and I finding him and waking him up with his cat. He would be so happy. So anyway, not that the listeners needed to know that. So now that I've brought you down a little bit. So Cody, you're the author of The Family Condition. And yeah, I'm in the middle of reading it. I had to stop because of the moving. I apologize about that.
Oh, no, not at all. Yeah.
John's read the entire thing, really loves it. So I thought I'd let John take point, and then I'll have a few questions for you too. So you want to do it that way, John?
Sure, that's fine. I mean, a lot of my questions, I think, Cody, I'm trying not to give too spoilery questions, since that, you know, people obsess about that.
Yeah, I really liked it when Hugo did the thing with the thing.
Right, exactly. You know, and it's, why did you end the book with everybody, you know,
with everyone decapitated?
You know, I think a musical number was a bold choice to end this book with, you know. But
musical number.
Another thing is, people don't know if I'm telling the truth or not.
Let's find out. Yeah.
How would you introduce the book, Cody? If you were asked to introduce the book, how would you? I hate the notion of like, let's pitch the book. No, just introduce the book to us.
Oh yeah, I'm glad you made the difference. I'm really bad at pitching. Apparently.
Or somebody asked you at a party, let's say, hey, what is your book about? You know, maybe like that.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. I usually go pretty basic. I'm like, it's a horror story, love story, weird fiction, like all that stuff. I don't know. Yeah, I'm really bad at talking about my own work, but something like that. If I didn't straight up just read the back, I'd tell them a little bit about that. Yeah, it's very Poe inspired. Some consider it more of a gothic romance than a horror, and that's all right, however somebody wants to define it. But I think of it as like a uncanny horror love story type of thing, I guess. I don't know.
What led you in this direction? What like was there a particular moment where you're like, this is what I have to do? Was it something that developed over? And I'm talking specifically about the book, but feel free to treat this question more broadly. You know, have you always been drawn to this end of the literary spectrum, the cultural spectrum, or was there some moment that was like a sort of a catalyst where you were like, oh, hang on a minute?
Ooh, that's a good question. How do I think about that? But this book specifically, I don't know. I think all my favorite writers write a lot of different things, like different genres. I mean, Stephen King would be a big one, Dan Simmons, and so on. So I've never thought too hard about what genre a book is going to be when I start it. Other than that, it's probably going to be horror because of how much I love horror and gravitate to it. I think this one started with a really strange idea. I was like one morning staring at my ex-girlfriend's reptile, what do they call, bearded dragon?
Bearded dragon, yeah.
And just, you know, the writer mind being like, what if this, what if that? And I think it's funny. Looking at the lizard and thinking like, what if that was your grandma, like who acted like that? And you have to turn their light on and turn it off to, and feed them and water them, and they press up against the glass and stare out from it. That got characters in my head. It was like Hugo and Elodia, or eventually became them. And I didn't know it was going to be a love story. I thought it was going to be about them. I don't know. Yeah, you know how stories evolve, probably.
Yeah.
Turned into something. Yeah.
I really like, if I can jump in briefly, what you wrote in another interview with this question. You were staring at the bearded dragon and wondering, what if a person acted like this little reptile? What if they were more instinct than thought, fed on strange things, and were kept behind glass by whoever took care of them? What if that was your grandmother? Which led to other questions. So yeah, that is a really unique starting point.
Oh, thanks. Oh, I'm much better at writing than I am at talking. So I'm glad you read that aloud.
Well, I mean, the fascinating thing to me, I mean, this is more, I guess, commentary than question, but there is this kind of line in horror fiction, this family, or however you want to put it, of texts in which genetics is horrifying. Your inheritance, your genetic inheritance is horrifying. There's something, and I mean, I think about this a lot with a lot of Lovecraft stuff, where you discover, oh, I'm a fish person, and I mean, maybe not in quite that way, but or what have you. That's so that there's something where we find out that like what we thought of as our own kind of like authenticity as human beings, we're different from everything else. It's completely subverted, and either in that, no, we're kind of like everything else in ways that we don't like to contemplate, or yeah, we're not like anything else, we're far worse than we thought we were. So it strikes me that it's in its own unique way, like sort of participating in that kind of lineage.
Oh yeah. Oh, I love that. That's kind of the essence of body horror, you'd say. Like, you're not what you thought you were, and you don't have the control you thought you did, which is a very real thing for some people with serious conditions too, of different kinds, whether it's mental illness or like chronic pain and so on. Yeah.
Shadow over Innsmouth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it strikes me that body horror, I feel like over the last, I don't know how many years, seems to have had like a sort of gentle resurgence, not to the extent that like folk horror seems to be enjoying its moment, but body horror like has sort of risen, and it's kind of cruising along like a shark or something. And I kind of find myself wondering about that, and these kinds of explanations, I mean, they're always kind of facile, right? But at the same time, like I think to myself, well, we're at this kind of cultural moment where in some ways we understand more and more about our bodies, and what that means in part is we understand how our bodies can turn against us or can turn against our loved ones. Somebody I saw advertised somewhere, I keep getting discount coupons for like my local healthcare laboratories, which makes me really nervous. And one of the things they said was, they were like, you can come in and you can get the pre-Alzheimer's test now. And
Oh God.
knock on wood, there's no history of that in my family, but nonetheless I was like, ooh, do I want that or not? And do I want to know that I have this possibility for this terrible thing to happen to me, that there's this thing inside me that could just kind of burst out? And I've been talking about like family illnesses with my younger son, because he's 20 and he's starting to, get his own doctor, think about this kind of stuff. And I'm like, well, there's high cholesterol here and there's heart disease there, and there, here's your inheritance, son. It's this is the family legacy. You're not going to get any money, but you will have diabetes.
So
Yeah.
spinning off of that, last night, we've had to deal with, in the last year, I buried 3 parents or in-laws or whatnot. And my daughter finally broached the subject, like, Pete, Dad, at what mental faculty loss stage do you want no longer to be functional? When do we take you off life support?
When did we feed you the poison, Dad?
Exactly. And I think it's a very poignant question, because she's seeing what we're having to do and what decisions we have to make, but also she wants to know, like, what do we do with your ashes? Or how do
I've
you
got plans. I've got plans for your ashes. Don't worry.
Oh, so do I. Like, first I told her that I wanted to be scattered over Disneyland, but then I didn't want to be cremated.
Where every horror writer wants to be. Yes.
Right.
It's a
Oh,
small
no,
world.
I actually have two.
Matt will sing the song while he sprinkles it, and it's a small world.
I actually have two ideas. One, I want to be ashed and pulverized and put into a game timer, like one of those hourglasses, so I can still be in part of family game night.
He's running out. He's running out.
He's a horror writer. Yeah, for sure.
But the other thing we thought of is, like, you could mix ashes with concrete and then you could pour them into busts of yourself. So, like, you could sit on the mantelpiece as a bust of your own image.
Sure.
And
That sounds like a creepy golem kind of situation. Like, you'd just be
Right?
walking by and the eyes would move,
but then you could, like, install like a recording of the guy's voice in there, and like a motion sensor.
That's traumatizing.
But then you set it up to like a magic 8-ball kind of thing, whereas like you ask it questions and it just gives cryptic answers.
Sounds a little night gallery. Yeah.
Yeah. John Langan is like,
I'm just like, you got too much time on your hands, man.
I do.
That's
but,
what this is coming down to. On the other hand, I keep thinking about there was an episode of Seinfeld where Kramer's watching this movie, and it's about someone who goes into a coma. And Kramer, he always falls asleep. He can't finish the end of the movie. So he's like, oh, I don't want to be in a coma. So he gets Elaine, they go to the doctor, and he appoints her like she's going to be the person who makes the decision when to turn it off, and the doctor is running through all these, or the lawyer, excuse me, is running through all these possibilities, and everyone, no matter how mild, Elaine is like, that's it. And then he's like, and then he finally watches I'm sorry, I'm going to spoil an episode of Seinfeld for everybody. He finally watches the end of the movie, and the guy comes out of the coma, and Kramer's like, I have to change my will. And then he gets like, the end of it is him getting hit in the head and falling down.
Now, Kramer is a guy who had too much time on his hands.
Exactly.
Sure. Well, this obviously fascinates you, Cody. I mean, you wrote a book dealing with those themes. What led to your fascination? Do you know, or is this something that's always been there? Or?
Oh, with the condition aspect of the.
Yeah, like John and the others were saying, no control over what's going to happen in your body, genetics.
Yeah. The story, I don't know if it necessarily started with the fascination with that, but it kind of became that as it went along. And so I started doing some research on things and trying to portray that in some a way that felt authentic, at least. But then also it became, to me, a way of talking about autonomy in a lot of different ways too. Whether it was in like literal, like, female body autonomy, which is an increasingly relevant topic. Not that I went into it with that intention, but I was like, there's a lot of things that can be spoken about through this. Yeah, I don't know because I don't suffer from anything like that physical or anything. But I have my own. Yeah, I guess we all do, little conditions, and I suppose that was my way of. Or that made it into the story in some capacity, at least.
Yeah, and families are I feel like the families are they're a source of horror, like that, because they're, they nurture you, but at the same time, because they nurture you, like, they know all the vulnerable places, right? I mean, they know no one can cut you like your family can cut you. I mean that metaphorically, but possibly also literally. And
in your experience.
Well, I'm just saying, but the wounds are healing nicely. But
the mental scars, however, will never go away.
No, that's it's but also the romance. I'm glad you brought up the kind of the sort of gothic romance element to it, because I feel like one thing I feel like I'm going to make a sweeping generalization that is immediately going to be not true, but nonetheless, I feel like romance of whatever weird kind. I'm not sure how much that has a place or finds a place. Maybe it has a place, but how much it finds a place in a lot of horror fiction, in the midst of worries about like the vengeance of the past and this sort of stuff. You know, like I don't know to what extent that kind of weird Tim Burton-y, and I don't mean that in a pejorative way, kind of aspect. I don't know how often that comes into horror stories. And I don't know. I wonder if you could speak about that a little bit. What your impulses were in that direction, or what you, because it's one of the things that makes The Family Condition its own book. You know, and I wonder if you could speak to that a little bit.
Oh yeah. Oh, thank you for that compliment. Oh, that's a good question. These are all really good questions. I'm trying to think of how to answer. But
well, let me tell you one thing before you answer. I'm loving The Family Condition. I know John really loved it. And you're a very talented guy. We're glad you're here. So if you feel nervous or anything, don't be. You're among friends. So
you're not really. We're going to make fun of you after you're gone, but you know,
yeah.
John should know.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Bridget's going to compose a little Halloween melody, and it's going to be
Let's see, what rhymes with Langan?
Yeah. That would make it feel more like home, actually. Yeah, I got a family full of people that are really good at giving each other crap in a good way.
There you go.
Yeah. How else do you know you're liked? The romance thing. I think part of it was, for me, it was almost like the absurd humor was the, you know, meet the parents, but because that's a nervous thing anyway with relationships. You know, it's like, oh, you get at a certain stage and it's like, hey, come meet my family. You know, we're close enough, and that has a lot of anxiety attached to it anyway. So I thought it was very funny. Just thought, I mean, like, oh, and by the way, my mom's a monster, kind of thing, but like literally, not just in the like, you know, like don't talk to my mom. So that seemed like a fun thing to explore, which I think, was it Get Out? Jordan Peele's film did an amazing version of that. But for writing the romance, I don't know. I think I gravitate towards love stories in my writing a lot, like whether it's longing or like, you know, unrequited love, or just this one was more of a straight love story with a few caveats, I suppose. But
Is that, to John's question, is that something that, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you were thinking more of the, you know, from the bearded dragon to the monstrous family member aspect, and like, oh, this could be a good story. This could be a, you know, and then, but the romance, did that just sort of almost creep in on its own, and or was it planned like the other?
Oh yeah, it kind of did creep in on its own, because the main character was, I think, the last character that I came up with for the story. I kept trying to write it from the point of view of like the parents, and then from Elodie, their daughter, and it just wasn't working. I was like, I think I need the audience surrogate character, or so they call him, and that was Bennett. So he came last, and then the story was like really easy to write from there. So that became like his entryway into the family, and then the audience's entryway into the family was the main character falling in love with Elodie and all the baggage of that. So I in a way, it felt like a way of writing about relationships, or trying to, and then the horror came into that, I suppose. Yeah. I hope that answers the question. I'm trying to think of,
yeah. No, it does. What I mean, in terms of stuff that that you were reading, let's say when you were younger, like what were the things that were kind of feeding your weirdness?
This one felt very Poe inspired for me. I used to read Poe almost like compulsively. His poetry is even more than his short stories. Back in high school, I'd have those angst-ridden days and nights, and I'd be like at midnight, and I'd like way far away from sleeping, and I'd crack open my Poe thing and just read so much. So it felt like I was drawing on that, a little bit of that, and I feel like I'm always taking a little bit from Shirley Jackson's, at least the first parts of The Haunting of Hill House. The weirdness, though, it's a good question. Oh, there's so many weird things that I love. One thing was, speaking of romance and horror, The Shape of Water, Guillermo del Toro. I love Del Toro a lot, and that one came. I remember thinking about it later. I'm like, oh, I hope I'm not just writing a version of Shape of Water when I did my like yearly rewatch. But that became a good way of like, I'm going to take a little bit of influence from that, do it, you know, how we take things and do it our own way, or try to, as writers. Yeah.
Your dad got you into horror, I read, in a lot of ways. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. Speaking of the family influence on things, being introduced to movies that I was probably too young for, but I'm very grateful for having been introduced to at that age. Yeah. Yeah, I think my dad, he always loved and still does anything horror, supernatural, and creepy. So I remember when I started to take a liking to stuff like that, like Twilight Zone episodes as a kid, and he'd show like, I think the first movie that gave me nightmares was probably The Birds by Hitchcock. I remember that.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And he was the one who suggested, I was about 13, going on 14. And he said, I was starting to look for horror movies to scare me. And he goes, you ever heard of this guy named Stephen King? And like suggested I look for a story called It, which I don't think he had read at that point, but he, of course, grew up watching that miniseries and so on. So found that book and was traumatized by it. And then addicted to horror and Stephen King from then on. Yeah.
Wait,
I like the thought that your dad is like planning. He's like, all right, at this age, I introduced him to It. Now, 2 years later, it's going to be The Exorcist, you know, and he's got like this secret like map, turning my son into a horror writer.
With check marks. Yep.
As if you don't.
We're on track.
Sometimes it seemed, when I look back, I'm like, not that he was doing it on purpose, but it seemed like it could have been methodical, where I'm like, oh, I can see him asking my mom, is he too young for this one? And then, you know, that's how it went for a lot of my childhood.
And at one point, at one point, your dad like finds your box of videotapes under the bed. It's like, Bambi.
Exactly. He's
Who
like,
gave you this?
Who told you about this?
That's
Babbitts feast. What is this?
You come in and your parents are at the kitchen table like, Cody, we need to talk.
We're going to talk about this.
Where did this come from?
I learned it from you. I learned it from watching you.
Howard's End.
Somewhere in time.
But there's that's in a way though, that's one of the things that's kind of interesting to me about this is I've seen, these memes going around about, oh, Gen X kids, we all read Stephen King when we were too young, and that's why we are the way we are, And I remember when my son was a lot younger, my wife and I, we read a lot, we've seen a lot of movies, so we kind of curated a lot of what he was reading and seeing much more thoroughly than my parents did with me. My parents had no idea most of what I was reading, and as we say, for better and for worse. And I sometimes kind of think about that, if you are worried about, or, have you concerned about what your kid is reading or watching, you can go online and find all kinds of extensive reviews that will tell you, oh, this film has the F word in it. And I worry about the way that kind of sanitizes the experience of childhood, especially in terms of encountering art, so that like what your dad was doing was sort of in a careful, in an observant kind of way, saying, hey, check this out, and letting you go to that scary place, and there's something to be said for that.
Oh, I think about that a lot, because was it Neil Gaiman who spoke on that, like the importance of encountering like fear in fiction at a young age before you're ready to deal with it, because it's a safe place, it's fiction, whether it's a movie or something, and coping with that fear teaches you a lot about yourself, which I felt, looking back on all those nightmares. And even the second Harry Potter movie, I remember being a kid scared of my closet literally and being like the yellow eyes of the basilisk. I learned a lot about myself trying to learn how to get to sleep.
Well, because like are you ever, I didn't even know if now I'm ready for it, like, I mean, okay, you can watch movies and be like, oh yeah, I see that's a special effect or whatever, but even so, I mean, and I'm not trying to be glib, I mean, there is certainly, you probably shouldn't show your 6-year-old the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, right? I mean, there are sort of obvious limits, I guess, obvious boundaries, but in other ways, fear is, I feel like, is never something that we're especially ready for.
Oh yeah, that's a really cool way to put that. I think that sounds very poignant, very true.
But
oh man.
yeah.
Now Pete's
Oh,
going to argue with me.
Yeah.
No. I think you're right.
well, Pete has
Fear-
experience with his dad reading him.
Yeah. Yeah.
sort of
But
thing.
on the
I thought your dad used to read you the interviews from Playboy. He was like, "Oh, you want to look at this, huh? Here we go."
No. Actually, the funny thing is like the first time I read The Fly was in Playboy.
Really?
Yeah, because that's where it was first published. But
That actually rings a bell. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
we might not be ready for fear, but I think it's a mistake to delay learning about it. And death as well. I mean, I can remember my parents, shielding me from death of people very handily. I never went to a funeral as a kid, but I know relatives all around me were dying. They just never took us. They always shoved us up on somebody else to like take care of the kids while we go to this funeral. But I think that's a mistake, because then you don't learn how to deal with it. And you don't, when you finally do end up going to a funeral, you have no guidance. You haven't seen how to behave. And,
Yeah.
I think that's important.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
I can remember the first open casket wake I went to. I was very, very young, and I was 12 or 13, and another altar boy from the church had died of leukemia, and I went to his wake, and I did not know him. I just felt like some sense of solidarity that I should go to this thing, and in no way was I prepared for the sight of a kid who had died of leukemia in the casket there. Like and my parents just let me go. They were like, "Oh, okay, that's fine." I mean, I guess good in a way, but also I'm not so sure. Like, yes, expose kids to it, but maybe you can, give them some guide rails or something like that, guardrails,
Yeah, and you have to figure that out. But not exposing them at all
Yeah.
versus throwing them into the deep. I mean, you've got to ease it in, right?
Again, I was thinking about this out there walking the streets in the middle of the night looking for the cat. My son's not a little kid anymore by any means, but as a parent, when you really love your kid, you do want to protect them from bad things. From is Moon the cat out there in pain right now? Is he going to get run over? All this kind of stuff. And I said to Danielle, I said, I wish I could that he didn't have to deal with this, but there's only so much you can do, and you hopefully have prepared them for these types of situations growing up. You're never all the way prepared, of course.
There's a scene in Andrew Niederman's Pin where
That movie.
the kids are dealing with the death of their parents, I think. And the boy is like, our parents should have gotten us a dog.
Right.
And then she's like, why? She's like, so it would have died. So we would know how to behave and react. Because we've never had anything die before. And now we're stuck with our parents dead and we don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And I'm like, damn.
It's like what John was just saying about never being ready for fear, or never being prepared for it. Same thing with grief, with death, loss. So they very, very much seem to walk in hand. It's unknown. I think it's a show. One of my favorite lines from the show Dark on Netflix. I don't know if anyone's seen that.
I love that
It's a
show.
Great
Yeah.
show.
That's incredible. I think it's I won't give any details because there's a lot of spoilers for that show. But one of the characters says to another, and he says, death is incomprehensible, but you can come to peace with it. And that one stuck with me.
Yeah.
John, you've a couple of times said to me and to us how much you enjoyed The Family Condition. Just speaking to the audience, anyone who has not read this yet, could you just expound on that a little bit? And hey, maybe here's why you should put this to the top of your TBR pile, for example.
It's so much its own thing. I like, it's funny what Cody was just saying about Shirley Jackson. One of the things that Jackson is really good at is those kind of interpersonal relationships, and especially those kind of weird and uncomfortable interpersonal relationships, that where there's a lot of passive aggressiveness that's going on. And I think that monsters, family dynamics, like weird family dynamics, romance. I mean, people, come on, what are you waiting for? Stop. I feel like one of the things that you're always looking for, at least I'm always looking for when I'm reading, right, is I'm looking for something that is its own thing. And it's not to say that it doesn't, I can't detect traces of other things in it, but it is to say, like, I'm like, oh, this person just had something they were trying to do and they did it and they stuck to it, and they did not stray from the path. They didn't cop out with easy choices. And I just think, I think you told me you were up to like 400 reviews, or you didn't tell me, but I saw it, that you were up to like 400 reviews on Goodreads or Amazon or something like that. This thing should have 4,000. It should have 40,000. So, it takes a while sometimes for things to make their way out there. I totally, voice of experience, like I totally get that. So, if you haven't read this book, there's plenty of time. Even if you're like, my TBR pile is really tall, just buy it and put it on the pile, and some money will go to Cody and he can write another book and you'll get around to it eventually. And then you'll be like, oh my God, I can't believe I waited so long to read this book. Langan was right, as he always is.
Well, then not only that, but it's only $2.99 now on Kindle. So
yeah, come on, people. It's less than a latte.
Yeah, you're getting a lot for that.
And Cody will get your name right. He won't like make up some weird name,
Well, talk about, I know another one of your influences is the King in Yellow. Talk about that for a minute.
Oh yeah. First, thank you very much, John. For as much as I deeply love your writing, hearing that you say that about my book is surreal. Yes, I'll be going back and screen recording all of this, so it can make me happy later. The King in Yellow, though, that one, yeah. So that was, I encountered the King in Yellow back when I first read Revival by Stephen King, back pretty much right when it came out. I'm one of those people that buys King's books right when they come out. Usually reads them first thing. One.
I just want to clear something up. Are you 12? How old?
Am I 12? 28.
I think he's 12.
Okay. All right. Just trying to put things in context. It's like, because yeah. All right.
Well, he threw me a little when I think he said that his dad grew up watching it on TV.
All right.
But you're both really old.
Yeah, and that's what I was about to say.
True.
It's not a comment on how young you are. It's a comment on how old we all
are. There's a
reason
your daughter is like, how long do we keep you alive?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry,
I came home the other day, and my wife, my best friend, and her mother, my wife's mother-in-law, my wife's mother, were talking about the ins and outs of my insurance policy and how they would make more money if I was dismembered.
This is what we like to call foreshadowing.
But also possibly a red herring. I still have my eye on the daughter.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
Either way, it's coming from either way. It's gonna happen.
She likes the idea of pulling the plug out and then plugging it back in.
So we're doing some remodeling, and I accidentally when I was putting the electrical plates back on, I accidentally slipped the screwdriver into the socket. Accidentally.
Or your death wish.
Oh God, I almost electrocuted myself. And someone behind me said we were so close.
And you turned around and it was your entire family.
That must be a great insurance policy.
It's not bad.
So anyway, Cody, King in Yellow.
Yeah, I feel like I set that off by saying back when Revival came out. My bad. Yeah, But
Great book, yeah, but
oh,
I'll never
yeah.
I'll never read it again because of that ending. And plus I had a fever when I was reading it. So it just
Oh god,
it was in my nightmares. Yeah, but anyway, yeah.
yeah, that's one of King's, well, kind of one of my favorites actually. It's especially for a recent work of his. But he listed, like, right at the beginning of the book, he goes, "This is for the people who built my house," and he names a bunch of authors, including, I think, Robert Chambers is in there. And then the last one was Arthur Machen. I don't know if I'm saying that right. So I sought out Arthur Machen's The Great God Pan. I read that. And then at the same time, I was watching season 1 of True Detective, I think for the first time, and they brought up The King in Yellow, and I'd heard of that before, and I'm like, oh my god, that's. So I immediately got a copy of that. I don't think it hit as hard back then as it did when I reread it just a couple years ago now. Yeah, and that one, I love. For one, I love the incredible ambiguity of that story, where it's. I don't think they ever explain anything. Robert Chambers doesn't do any explaining at all. Which is an impulse I have to, like, weed out in myself when I'm going back and editing work. I'm like, I don't want to explain too much, especially in horror. And then the themes of, like, longing and nostalgia and, like, all these deep roiling emotions that affect these characters, in addition to the madness from the actual play from The King in Yellow. Something about that is, like, the kind of thing that I gravitate towards in writing, and some of my favorite stories deal with those themes. Even some things, I think grief is in the stories. And there's one, I think Nick Pizzolatto, the writer of True Detective, wrote in an introduction to The King in Yellow about how in this world that Chambers created, enlightenment is indistinguishable from madness, which frightens me quite a bit, just the thought of that. It's like, what if gaining more knowledge and more awareness, or whether it's self-awareness or about the world, or one by extension of the other, is not a good thing. So that has kind of seeped into my own, or influenced me over time more and more so, especially with my upcoming book. More, you'll see that more, I think, than in The Family Condition.
Yeah, when does that come out? It's called The Aching Plain, right?
Yeah, The Aching Plain. Assuming I can stay on schedule, which it's all looking pretty good, it should be very soon. Like, I was thinking like October 24th.
Oh, really?
I might have to put it back a little bit, but that's what I'm aiming for. Yeah.
That's great.
That's great news. Yeah.
You've talked to me several times privately about the influence that John Langan here has had on you, and talk somewhat about that. I give John a lot of shit, but I actually think very, very highly of him and his work. And so, yeah, talk about that and The Fisherman. And you wrote a review for me for the Lovecraft Easing website. You wrote a review of House of Windows as well,
which was a brilliant review, for which I'm very grateful.
Oh, thank you. I was grateful to. I mean, it's the kind of book it feels like a privilege to be able to read. I don't know. It's a. How do I describe? Yeah, I think I started with The Fisherman, of course. And I heard of it actually through my friend. I think you know him, John, Espen Aken. I hope I'm saying it well. From Norway. I've been friends with him on social media for years now.
He's made a couple of great movies. He's what was it, Troll, and then the Viking Wolf, which is just fabulous. Anyway, sorry.
Delicious. Yeah, he's I can't wait for Troll 2. Actually, I think he's working on that now. Yeah, but I remember seeing him talk about The Fisherman, and we follow each other on, like, Goodreads and stuff. And he said something where he goes, "Sometimes it feels like a book was written exactly for you. Like, it's just everything that you want." And he said that about The Fisherman, and I was like, "Ah, man." And Espen and I have a lot of overlap in our taste, so I had to seek it out. And I had already started to see its cover around at that time. So that book felt like, not to be presumptuous, it was like finding a total kindred spirit, where I'm like, oh my god, like, when you meet somebody and it's like you've known each other forever. I'm like, this is I feel like I've been looking for this book for forever. It's the type of thing where I don't know if you guys could relate, where there's a book or a movie that you can't really imagine your life before it, even though you spent most of your life without knowing about it before then. That is how I felt reading The Fisherman. I'm like, I can no longer imagine my life without this book in it. It embodies a lot of what I value in what I want to read, the deep literary, very human brought into this, like the total fun of an imagination of deep genre fiction. It's this beautiful mixture. In fact, Laird Barron's quote on the front is so apt: "The river runs through it straight to hell," which I think is awesome. Yeah.
Also, you guys were talking earlier about those feelings of loss and grief, and John deals with those. There's a character that goes through that and loses his wife, and it's been a while since I read it. What, a child too? Is that right?
One of them loses his wife and his children. Yeah.
Right. And I just remember reading the book and thinking the grief is just so well articulated. You can just feel what this guy is feeling and going through.
Oh yeah, that's exactly. Because I feel like I was introduced to death pretty young. My family has always had dogs, so that was came early. When I was a kid, I lost my grandmother when I was probably, was it 13, 14? And that was one that they could not and wouldn't have wanted to shield me from anyway. So it's like, I feel like in fiction, you can kind of tell when a writer is just writing about grief versus has some like heart there, where it's the more authentic. And The Fisherman, it just felt so seamless. So I'm like, speaks straight to my heart. This is in a way that you don't always get in horror, because horror can be just, not to speak badly about other horror novels in general, but there's so many different parts of the genre where it's like the more fun side, the more all these things. I gravitate more towards what The Fisherman was doing. Yeah.
On your blog, a blog entry, you talking about writing The Aching Plain, which again, I can't wait to read it. I'm quoting you, going into writing the writing of the story, 2 books haunted the process. First was The King in Yellow by Robert W. Chambers, and the other book was one that has become a cherished favorite, The Fisherman by John Langan. So yeah, interesting.
Well, thank you. I have no idea how to receive such abundant praise, so I'll try to deflect it with some kind of smart alecky remark.
Well, if I were you, I would thank your ghostwriter,
Wow.
Oh,
That's fantastic. That's right.
But yeah, I mean, you were scheduled for last week, and John couldn't make it, and I asked John what Sunday would be good for him, and he said this Sunday, and so I called you up and said, hey, I don't want to reschedule you, but it's your choice. You don't wait, and I think it was a good idea to do so.
Oh yeah, I really appreciate that. Yeah, and thank you for being here, John. That's
No, I had my mom with me last weekend. She's selling her house, and there was open house last weekend, so she came and stayed with my wife and I, and we were just trying to keep her entertained while people were going through my childhood home.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
You should have brought her on the Lovecraft Easing podcast. That would have been fun. You could have grilled her.
He doesn't want her to know about this side of his life.
Every now and again, she'll say that to me. She knows that she's supposed to try, like this is not her thing in the slightest, and so horror, any of that kind of stuff. And so every now and again she'll try. She'll just like, where do you get your ideas from? And that's like, she figures that that's a benign enough question, but she just,
I got him from you, Mom.
Well, it was when you did this, Mom.
Well, the funny thing is that when I said this to her once, when I was a kid and I would come in from school, my mom sometimes would be on the phone talking to my dad at work, and she would be like, oh, I was ironing today. My mom loves laundry. But she would like, I was ironing and I wasn't paying attention, and the iron just stuck to my skin and it just blistered. And I said this to her once, Mom, this is, and she got like really sort of upset at me for that. But I was like, what do you want? Like she would just she had this particular Scots-Irish ability to focus on horrifying physical pain, or it's it went right through his head, and yeah, thanks, Mom.
This reminds me of Danielle's mom. I'm actually surprised she's not more into horror. there's
She married you. I mean,
that's a great point. So she lives with the horror every day.
She does. I understand your wedding vows were all about that. I
Well,
embrace
when
the
she-
horror that is you, you know.
Right. Yeah. I
The
wrote my own.
shrieking, unfathomable abyss that my life is about to become.
I also wrote my own vows as well. So I love you so much. Thank you.
She- Thank you for taking me.
Well, apparently her mom, when Danielle was like 4 and 5, 6, somewhere in that age, before preschool, her mom would watch another kid that lived down the block or something, and they'd have nap time and all that kind of stuff. So her mom's way of keeping the kids in their beds, when, you know, instead of saying get back to your bed, she would take a broom and kind of knock on the ceiling. You know, they had an attic up there with the door in the ceiling, you know what I'm talking about. And she's like, whenever you hear that, it's the gunny sack man. And what he likes to do is he likes to get little kids who aren't taking their naps, and he puts them into his gunny sack and he takes them away, and they're never seen again. And so they knew she was telling them this story. So whenever she would hear them jibber jabbering at each other instead of trying to go to sleep, she'd take that broom hand and go, you know? So they thought the gunny sack man was up there in the attic coming to get them.
I wanna simultaneously high five her and call CPS on her.
Exactly.
Jeez.
It's a brilliant idea.
Sorry, Danielle. Had to do it.
So Cody, what about it's what about like some other things that maybe you've been reading? Could be recent, could be you know, not so recent, but what are a couple of things you would give shout outs to? Like who were if you want to spread the wealth, as it were, like who do you think people should take a look at?
Oh man. There's so many names I could go. Jeez.
You can throw out a
let's see.
few. It doesn't just have to
Yeah.
be one.
I'm pretty new to Mariana Enriquez. I've read The Dangers of Smoking in Bed, which was just such an awesome collection. That was crazy. And I'm currently reading Our Share of Night, her like 600-page novel, which is I'm just about 100 pages in, and it's already several times it just flooded with goosebumps. I'm like, this, oh my god, she's incredible. Yeah, so I would definitely recommend, and I already am recommending her to everyone.
Paul really likes that book too. He said he keeps going on and on about it. He told me, if you don't like the book, Tremblay, he goes, if you don't like the book, I'll refund it. And I'm like, that's not necessary, but that tells me a lot about how much you like the book.
It is. It's an amazing book.
Yeah, I really got to get to it. You know how TBR piles are.
Yeah, especially with big books. But yeah, that's
yes.
No, I saw Tremblay's quote on it, and John's as well, and a whole bunch of just names where I'm like, man, this is a big deal, isn't it? Who else have recently? Let's see. Speaking of Paul Tremblay, I haven't read his new collection, but I loved Paul Bear's Club. That one did some interesting things in my head, just the nature of the narration between the character writing an autobiography and another character commenting on it, where I hear both voices in my head at the same time. Like, that was so cool.
Yeah, we did. You told me you listened to the show, and you're a patron, which, by the way, thanks for that. But we did I don't know, about a year ago, guys, interview with Paul about the Paul Bearers Club. And so for the first hour, we talked about it with no spoilers for people who had not read the book yet. And then the second hour, we talked about with spoilers and, you know, theories about what's going on and, you know, all that kind of stuff. It's if you've read the book, especially, it's really interesting to listen to. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think I watched that one. That was great.
You also mentioned in that same blog post, I think it was, The Croning, and how much that book means.
Oh, The Croning.
Yeah,
Laird Barron. I'm pretty new to his work. I read The Wind Began to Howl, which is so awesome. That I could hear like the voice, that hard-boiled like Double Indemnity style like narration throughout that whole book, and that was so much fun. And the croning was so deeply disturbing. Oh my god. Kind of like how like the feeling that Revival left me with, that like empty, devastated feeling. There's just a couple books that come to mind that feel like Revival. The Croning, The Fisherman did that to me. Oh man, yeah. The Croning was a crazy book. Baron's voice is so powerful. There's I'm trying to think of other ones I read. I have to bring up my pictures. Brian, I've been reading Brian Evanson. I think I say his name.
Yeah.
Last Days and The Open Curtain are the two that I've read so far, and those are some books that are going to stay with me, man. Yeah. Between like absurdly hilarious and just incredibly shocking and disturbing, and as well as thought-provoking, they stay with you. Yeah, Evanson.
If you can find on, I think it's Audible has, I think it's Contagion is the name of the collection, and it's a collection that I think has only been released on audio, and Evanson narrates it, and it's amazing. It was like listening to that. I always liked Evanson's stuff, but listening to that, I was like, man, this guy is a genius. This is he's if I had any doubts about, is this guy a great writer or not? I was like, yeah, absolutely. And his voice is just pitch perfect for reading his own material. I mean, some people are, some people aren't, but he absolutely nails it.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, I can write that one down. That sounds great. I need to get more audiobooks too, so that's a great excuse.
Yeah.
We're
So
gonna
what
have him
about-
on in a month or two too, so stay tuned for that.
What about like film wise, Cody? Is there anything that has like caught your eye lately where you're like, oh yeah, I really like this, or something that you feel is like an undersung gem?
Oh man, film wise, let's see. I hadn't thought about films. I should have made a list.
That's all we talk about here is like bad movies that Pete has made us, watch.
Or DeBronzo.
Or DeBronzo, yeah. They're like, hey,
Hey,
the
DeBronzo.
human tomato.
Hey,
Have
Alan.
you ever heard of that one?
If you don't like what I watch, you don't have to listen. It's not my fault that you embrace my bad taste.
I don't embrace it. I actually just.
But apparently Langan does.
You feel bad though. You feel bad. Like the poor guy is there. His whole family is trying to kill him. You're like, he doesn't have that much longer. You're like, let me just watch whatever Kangaroo Man and see how bad it could be. And then you're like, crikey, that was terrible.
You should try it, John. You might like it.
But Alan Baxter's like #1 book is The Roo. I mean,
That's Alan Baxter.
that's what I said.
Yeah, that's Alan Baxter. That's
Yeah.
different from Kangaroo Man. Yeah.
But is it really?
Australia's first superhero. Yeah, no, it's yeah. Sorry. Gonna get a lot of like angry emails from the Australian contingent. So
Yeah.
anyway, Cody, back to you.
yeah. Oh, and real quick too, what you said about Evanson's pitch perfect voice reminded me of I think I picked him up the first time because Peter Straub wrote an introduction to Last Days, and Straub was one of my favorite writers, so that was like a recommendation from Straub, and by extension, in a way.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of which, there was an old talk that Straub gave. I used to watch his videos like all the time, find every interview I could and stuff. Maybe you've seen this one where an audience member asks him, what would you recommend in horror, like where I read next? And he said House of Windows. And he's like, it's a brilliant literary horror novel. And the guy goes, no, I meant from you. So I was like, oh.
No, I don't. Straub pivots very quickly and he's like, oh, let me talk about myself. And I was like, damn it, Peter, come on, man. No, it was a lovely, gracious moment. I'm not saying I replay that on a regular basis.
Right. Yeah. Trying to think of films because let's see.
Yeah,
I
I warned you about the influences question. That can be kind of a on the spot question. But I didn't think about the films though.
Oh no, that's right. The thing is, I've been doing a lot of rewatching lately instead of watching new stuff. Except for, I just bought a copy of Skinamarink, so I'm going to be watching that soon. And then I see my dad recommended a movie called The Unbinding, which I'm going to be watching pretty soon too.
Wow.
I heard that one. It's like a documentary. Apparently, it's not a fake documentary. And I guess it takes place in the Catskills too. I'm like,
Oh,
oh,
wow.
that brings something to mind.
And I'm suddenly thinking maybe we should have just asked your dad. We should just be like, look, what are you watching? What movies are you telling Cody he has to watch? You know,
Actually, that would be fun to follow up with, like, to do.
your dad's recommendations, you
Yeah.
know.
Oh, actually, he'd probably love that. Yeah. He's been doing a
Cody
better job watching
Langan's
new
dad
stuff.
recommend. It's a whole 5-minute segment of the Lovecraft Easy in the future. Cody Langan's dad recommends.
Right. And you and your dad just come on and you're like, well, what are you watching? And he's like, oh,
Love it.
It'd be fun. Yeah.
What?
And my poor mom has to go through the fact that her husband and son love horror, and she sits through it though. Yeah. I don't know. I watch a lot of like foreign film. I used to work at a little movie store in Northern California, and I wish I could say they were still there, but they closed just not that long ago. And the collection was very like obscure and like eclectic and foreign and all this stuff. It was like getting an education working there. So I love foreign films. I love really boring, slow movies that are artful.
Oh, then you're gonna love Skinamarink.
That's what a friend told me the same thing. They're like, you like this weird stuff. You might like that one. You know, I'm like, all right, cool. Not that long ago was Lake Mungo. I watched that one. Late at night.
I am once
all by
again
myself.
validated.
Yeah, that one bothered me like in a good way.
have you seen that director has a new movie? It's either out or coming out.
Really?
And it has a completely,
I thought he wasn't working. Wow.
No, it is a completely, oh God, I cannot, you have to like, I don't know, look up in the show notes or whatever, you know, like put it in the show notes, like, but the poster for it, it's a completely different vibe from Lake Mungo, which is really fascinating to me. And I just I want to see what Paul Tremblay and Nadia Bulkin have to say about it, because I think you had them on talking about it, didn't you?
Yeah, we did a Patreon podcast about Lake Mungo.
Paul and Nadia's obsession with this particular director. I just want to, you know.
Well, Paul just got the Blu-ray with all the interviews and all that stuff about a year ago.
Of Lake Mungo?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Let me ask you, this is, I think, will be especially inspiring maybe to writers out there, as well as those that are getting started in writing. And you're speaking, I'll quote you again from your blog, and you're speaking about The Aching Plain. And you wrote, when I began writing The Aching Plain in early 2022, it was with a renewed passion for the writing process. But I'd been in a slump for a long time, writing poetry more often than working on any larger projects. And I had given in to too many pieces of conventional practical wisdom. I was keeping track of my daily word count. I had stopped writing by hand, and I was typing directly on the computer. I was thinking too much about an imagined audience's reaction to the story. All of that and more. A series of difficult emotional experiences made it clear to me how much I needed my own writing. And so I decided, damn to all those things. There was a time when I was in love with the writing process, so I decided to go back to my own basics. Pen to paper, no more tracking daily progress except for what I could see on the page. No more thoughts of future publication or possible audience reaction. What is the book that I really want to read? How much fun can I have writing it? What scares me? What really scares me? And yeah, I think that paragraph could probably be inspiring and helpful to a lot of writers out there, and not just beginning writers, but you know, or anyone that's a creative person, you know, writing what you love as opposed to, you know, doing it a certain way, word counts and everything you said. So
oh, thank you. Yeah, I hope so, as far as it being inspiring. Yeah, for me it was, I made sure to say back to my own basics, because everyone has their own basics.
right.
And yeah, that was a strange time for everyone, actually. You know, 2020-ish. Well, that was more 2020. I'm so bad at the time now, ever since COVID.
2020 and 2021, those were the two really hard years. Yeah.
Yeah. And that one, I'd not been writing horror for a while. When I started The Aching Plain, and it was like coming home again, realizing I'm like, I don't know what it was that I avoided horror for a while, and then coming back to it was like so much fun. And I say fun, but I wrote like a really sad book. So I had a lot of
Right.
fun writing a really sad book.
All right. Well, anything else you guys want to ask Cody before we talk about a few other things?
Oh, and I meant to turn some of the questions around too. If you guys had recommendations, books and movies, I'll just be showing my partner, who has not seen a lot of movies in general, movies that she needs to see, like The Shining, probably tonight or tomorrow. Sorry, Stephen King. It's a good movie, I think.
Well, I will tell you one thing. I got interrupted for reasons I've mentioned before, but I was watching The Boogeyman last night. It just arrived on Hulu, and I've gotten about halfway through it, and I think you've seen it all, DeBronzo, right?
Yeah, we just
It's-
watched it last night too.
It's really good.
Yeah,
Actually.
yeah, I definitely give a solid recommendation of that. It does. I'm not going to give any spoilers, but like the short stories in there, obviously they had to expand it. But it works really well, and it's effective. It's also by the director of The Host, by the way, Rob Savage.
Rob Savage, yeah,
There's
of Host, yeah.
there's a nice cameo by one of the characters in there from that movie in this one. It's
Yeah.
like really brief. You've seen it, that part?
Well, yeah, I recognized her. We had her on
Yeah,
after Host. Really nice lady.
yeah. I thought that was
She's-
pretty cool.
She said something that has stuck with me since then about doing your own thing, being creative, working for yourself. And she said, you have to be okay with being poor. You have to be willing to be poor.
Mm.
It's not that you're always going to be poor, but
Yeah.
maybe you will be, but are you doing what you love?
Yeah.
She put it much better than I just did, but it's really stuck with me. But yeah, Boogeyman's really
Good to hear.
good so far.
The
You
trailer was
should
really
never
good.
go on strike or be opposed to writers and actors who are on strike, because they know how to live without money.
Good point.
It's just, we've all gone through like long periods of time where nothing is selling and you can't get on stage, and you figure out how to make do.
Right. This gives you an excuse. Oh,
Yeah.
I would love to write, but I'm on strike. I can't. Oh man. Yeah, that was geez, that was like a rookie move on the part of Bob Iger et al.
Yeah. If we're talking about movies, I watched Pet Cemetery Bloodlines.
I heard that was
Yeah,
not
that
good.
I heard it was not good.
It's not good. It's not bad. I don't think it's scary. Two, they kind of stole some ideas straight from it, in that it's a multi-generational horror story, in that people in the town stay in the town to fight the multi-generational horror.
Right.
And like it's not part of the book.
I just want to see it get gentrified. They're
Yeah.
just like, we're going to put some condos over here. And,
Right.
Speaking of it, isn't there there's a documentary about the making of it and the actors, adult and child actors at the time. I haven't seen it yet, but I watched the trailer. It looks interesting.
I saw an interesting indie film called, I just remembered, I think it's called The Endless.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Love that
yeah.
flick.
Great,
Yeah, that was a
great
good
film.
one.
Those guys are great. I thought even the new one, Something in the Dirt. I'm not 100. I don't like it as much as I like The Endless, but it's still really worth seeing.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that one.
Yeah, I meant to remember their names.
Really, you told me to wait till it was free.
Moorhead and Benson, I think it is.
Yeah.
Aren't they directing Loki for Marvel
They did
now?
Yeah, they are.
about half the episodes.
Which
actually
good for them. They should get some money.
They actually did a segment of one of the VHS movies too. Just read that VHS 99 with the skateboarders and like the Satanists. I did not know that was them. But yeah, I do go back to you, Mike. Yeah, I did say wait till it's free, but yeah, if it's free.
I got a very short list here from Bloody Disgusting that I happened on that I'm going to keep open in my browser tabs because several of these movies actually do look interesting to me. One's called Totally Killer. The film follows Jamie, whose mom Pam is terrorized by the resurgence of the Sweet 16 killer, a masked maniac that slaughtered a bunch of teenage girls in the 80s. With the help of her friend Amelia, she travels back in time to 1987 and teams up with the teen version of her mom to try and stop the killer. It's described as a slasher comedy. I can see this being either totally brilliant or really bad. So,
Either way, you know that Stephen Graham Jones has a front row seat for that thing with a huge bucket of popcorn.
mhm.
I
So
watched that this morning.
did
You
you?
did.
What'd you think?
How
I
was
watched
it?
this. It was not bad. If you watch the Happy Death Day Part 2, it was similar to that.
Okay.
Look,
I like
I
the detail about with the help of her friend travels back in time. Like her
Right.
friend is like, I just happen to have a time machine here.
If you need to
Oh,
travel in time, you're going to need a friend to help you.
right, you're going to need to use this. It's a DeLorean.
I have really enjoyed both Happy Death Day. I wasn't really sold on Happy Death Day 2, but I also really enjoyed Freaky, which is sort of a Freaky Friday serial killer thing.
That's the one with Vince Vaughn.
Yeah. I'm really enjoying this whole, I don't know, slipstream horror films where they're mashing up different genres and coming up
Yeah.
with some great ideas.
Well, the next one is VHS 85. Quote, unveiled through a made-for-TV documentary, 5 chilling tales emerge. Scientists observe an unusual boy fixated on his TV. Kids embark on a lake skiing adventure. A TV crew fights to survive a natural disaster. The early days of VR awaken something terrifying, and a deadly dream is captured on tape. Sinister secrets of the 80s come to life in a way you've never seen before. Dun, dun, dun.
I lived through the 80s. I can tell you all about the Sinisters. It's
Yeah.
not a secret.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, the
Me and
VHS
Cody's dad. Yeah.
the VHS series has been sort of very uneven.
Yeah.
There are a few good pieces in there, but most of it is just unwatchable for me.
It's always a mixed bag.
Yeah. So
I think those are the only 2 that really looked interesting to me on this list. So there you go.
I took my whole family
Uh-oh.
to see Killer Clowns from a double feature, Killer Clowns from Outer Space and Freaks.
Amazing.
Wow.
And
That was when your daughter was like, so how long do you think you got? I mean,
Is
what
this
are we
why
talking
she wants to
about?
kill you? Yeah.
That was the trigger.
Right. She was just like, what happens if we replace his Lipitor with like M&Ms?
What happens if we replace his Lipitor with niacin?
so my older daughter had seen the movie before, and she has my signed movie poster from Chiodo Brothers. And now my younger daughter is like, she wants that poster. She fell in love with the film. I think it's a great film. And I think it's, it is a great example of non-studio filmmaking. And
I feel that's a euphemism.
all right. What do you?
I don't know. I'm just that's like, when you say, I really like you, and the object of your affection says, you're so nice. And you're like, oh.
Yeah.
So it's just a great example of non-studio filmmaking.
You've got a great personality.
Exactly. This
Yeah,
film
sure.
this film is on film. Yeah.
Yeah.
This film has
this
characters.
is a movie.
This is a movie with actors.
It's one of the movies. of
Oh,
all
that
time.
actually is debatable.
This is a film with people.
So
I've seen, what was it, DeBronzo, what was the movie that we watched where we couldn't find any actor who appeared in any other movie?
Oh, was that Trick of the Mutilator? Or was it another one?
I think it was Trick and the Mutilated. It was like,
Yeah. Strangely, it did not launch a lot of careers. Who would have thought?
Wait, was it Trick
An
of the
awful
Mutilator?
Shriek of the Mutilated. You should
Shriek
watch
of
it,
the
John.
Mutilated.
Shriek
Okay,
of the
no, I'm sure.
Mutilated.
If he's Trick,
that's
I
the
guess
one
it's
we watched.
Yeah.
We did the Mystery Science Theater 3000 thing.
I
Trick
think-
of the Mutilator is probably the sequel that was never greenlit.
John, you should
So-
watch it and come back with notes.
I'll
So
just
the-
come back like crazy, you know?
DeBronzo's here, Alan Hughes is here, and Alan's gonna briefly talk to us about horror video games. He's working on, excuse me, cosmic horror video games. So there's several new that he's played that I just wanted to get out there. Before he does, I just wanted to say, John, I'm reading Lost in the Dark.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, that your novella in Haunted Nights, edited by Ellen Datlow. Really, really enjoying it. We got on a you know, that genre, experimental film, night film,
Yeah, yeah.
flicker type of book. We got on talking about that last week, and I'm still going to do a blog post about it in the next couple of days with a list. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it.
The experimental film is fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, Gemma knows film. Gemma Files knows film from the inside out as a film critic. And I don't know if she wrote scripts. I know her stuff was adapted for the old Hunger TV show, which I think was a Canadian production. And yeah, she's someone who's just been doing like astonishing work. And I feel this odd sort of kinship with her because, you know, she's a few other novels before that, but most of her work has been short fiction. And then there's like experimental film, you know, and she's just been on a tear for, I don't know, man, like the last decade and a half or something like that. And yeah, her short fiction, there's a new collection, I think, that's coming out from Grimscribe, maybe, which I'm really excited about. But yeah, she's fantastic.
Yeah,
I bought
and
that book
for
not that long ago. I'm excited to read the experimental film. Yeah, it looked
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. She's yeah, it's dense and horrifying.
Has there ever been any interest in making that into a movie?
I don't know. You feel like there should be, right? I mean, it's like a
Yeah,
no-brainer, you know.
I would say more of a Amazon Prime or Netflix or Hulu series would probably
limited
suit
series?
it better. Limited series, yeah.
Yeah,
You know,
I think you could kind of boil it down to 2 hours if you did it right. You know, my extensive movie knowledge
Yeah.
and career, but yeah, I could see that too.
well, if
Yeah.
you're a fan of this sort of subgenre and you enjoy reading John Langan's work and you're not aware of this, he's this Lost in the Dark short story.
Oh, it's a novella. I
Right.
mean, it's a novella.
It's in Haunted Nights. So I mean, there are a lot of great stories in that anthology, but even if you spent the money on that alone, it'd be worth it. So
But there's some terrific stories in there. It's an I think Ellen Datlow and Lisa Morton edited
Lisa
it.
Morton.
So
Yeah, thank you
yeah,
for
yeah,
saying
yeah.
that. Yeah, exactly.
Hey, John, is Gemma's collection Dark is better, or is it a newer one than that?
No,
No,
that's
this
a
came
great
out in
question.
This came
There's
out in
Worm in
January.
Every Heart. Is that it?
No, that's
That's an
older.
older
There
one.
was
That's older, okay.
Kissing Carrion and The Worm in Every Heart were her first two collections. Dark is better. There's a more recent one than that. There's one that's like just
Uh-huh.
about to come out. I
Oh.
think Dark is better was January. This will be October.
If there
Yeah,
were
'cause I
only
just-
some way we could look this up, some sort of database that we could.
Go
You're
on,
asking a
go
lot.
on. I like where you're going with this.
Okay, yeah. Uh-huh.
It's going to be like a license to print money.
Dark is better. I can't. What's the date on that?
January 2023, I believe. In that,
you are-
unless
you
our
are
end was
correct, sir.
before that.
You are correct.
Yeah, no, look for Grimscribe and see what they're saying.
Okay. Give me 1 second, folks. Friends.
Look at old people trying to Google.
That's right. Oh, Google. Oh, you are right. I should do that. Yeah, I'm just finding Dark is better. You're not thinking of In That Endlessness Our End, though, are you?
I think that was before the.
Yeah,
Dark
no,
is
that
better.
was before.
Yeah.
Let's see what.
Love that title.
Blood from the Air. Yeah, Blood from the Air.
Is that the have Grimscribe?
Yeah.
That would be. Oh yeah, here it is. Blood from the Air.
Okay. Good. Well, I'll include a link in the show notes, everyone. So
Yeah, Gemma's just a lunatic. She's great.
The compliments in the horror genre are so wonderful.
and
Like, it's
Gemma listening to this is
horrifying, I
going,
love it.
thanks, I think.
Well, years ago, I've told the story very often that years ago, Brett Cox and I were reading for the Shirley Jackson Awards, and we had read this collection by a Japanese writer named Otsuichi. The collection was called Zoo, and Brett walks up to me in the lobby of the hotel Boscone was being held at, and he's like, "Man, did you read that? That was some fucked up shit." But the way that he said it, it was like it was such a compliment, and I knew exactly what he meant, like, yeah, absolutely. Not the kind of thing your publisher will put on the cover, but still,
Yeah.
for
Yeah,
those who are
That's
in
a
the
great
know.
blurb.
Yeah.
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 So
that-
John, I know you've heard me say this, but the cover blurb for the first edition of The Wild Boys by William S. Burroughs, more
Yes.
lucid than Naked Lunch.
Wow, damned with fake
Is it
praise.
everything?
Yeah. The Scottish writer Alistair Gray designed all of his own books, and on the back covers of his books, he used to have two lists of blurbs, and one was for, and the other was not very for, and he would list the good reviews and the bad reviews sort of side by side. Like, you make up your mind, everybody.
Oh,
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, Alan is a good friend, Patreon, and I think you wanted to talk about a few games before we go. So,
Okay.
for any of you who are not gamers, you don't have to stick around for this, but it should be.
I know.
And there are some free browser games that you were telling me about too. You don't even have to spend any money.
Yes, I've been aware of itch.io, itch.io for a while. It's catch kids in class playing games on their phone or on their tablet, but I didn't think much of it. But
This is how you
it's-
get all these games. This is where you get your ideas.
it keeps me
Okay.
young. The
You
kids
know
keep
how?
me young.
Yeah. Do you know how many Steam codes I've sent this guy?
But itch.io's got some great horror games, short games. You can play them on the browser or download them. And right now they're doing a Cosmic Horror Jam. So developers have to put together a game this month. And Bridget, they need a lot of people want composers to contribute work. So if you want to go look at it, there might be an outlet for some work there. But last year they put together a Cosmic Horror Jam, and you can find the results. There's some great games there, some really good Lovecraftian games. And
Last year, those are still available to play, and they're in the process of doing the one for this year. Is that what?
right?
You
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, they're free, and a couple of really good ones. Even a Cthulhu rhythm game.
What I've been waiting for. Yeah.
Yeah, you can just play with your space bar.
Actually, yeah, that's probably as good as it gets with me.
There's also, if you're interested, there's someone is making on itch.io a Twin Peaks game. It's an adaptation of the pilot, the Twin Peaks pilot, but it's made like it would have been made in the 1990s.
Oh,
I'll
wow.
spoil that for you. Laura Palmer's dead.
She is.
Yeah, it's
And
called.
she's wrapped in plastic.
It's free. You can download it. They kind of make a disclaimer that they've not been sent a cease and desist letter yet. So grab it while it's still there.
I tell my son, he's a big time gamer. I tell him about the text adventure games I played in the 80s, thinking I was all that, and he just rolls his eyes.
Yeah.
What can you say to old people? They just don't get it.
Actually, I'd be kind of fascinated to play a game where you are Laura Palmer and you're going to die. You just have to figure out how to make it the most interesting and weird way possible.
You're sick. You're sick.
Choose
Man.
your own adventure.
Well, that's what those text adventure games were like, but more elaborate. But I like choose your own adventure. Anyway, sorry, Alan, go ahead.
Oh no, and well, the 2023 has been a great year for horror games, mostly because of a couple of remakes, Dead Space and Resident Evil. But yeah, those aren't for everybody. But Dredge, we talked about that earlier. It's a Lovecraftian fishing game.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it came out
It's
earlier
sort of
this year.
relaxing. It's a horror game, but it's sort of relaxing too.
And it's very relaxing, beautiful to look at.
Like Skinamarink.
Oh my God.
And they're announced a DLC recently that's going to add a polar setting, and you will be finding the remnants of a lost expedition. So
Really?
if that doesn't sound
That's cool.
Yeah, that
like a
sounds
certain
vaguely
story.
familiar. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I guess I posted it on the Lovecraft Easing Facebook page, but I'm playing a game called Forgive Me, Father. It's a first-person shooter, which isn't the most horrific genre, but it's very Evil Dead. If you like Evil Dead and just blowing up things with different weapons, check that out. It's called Forgive Me, Father. And you can, and a sequel's coming out too. So it was successful enough.
So is the
Forgive Me,
sequel like
Father.
Forgive Me, Mother?
It's Forgive Me, Father too.
Forgive Me,
The
Father
number
too.
two.
I didn't learn
I
from
know.
Forgive Me, Father one. So
Well, they should have made it TOO. That would have been a little more interesting.
Forgive Me, Father again.
So for
Yeah.
you gamers out there, yeah, write down Dredge if you don't already know about it. Forgive Me, Father. I know you got several more, but just
No,
no.
and just keep an eye out on what's coming out later this year. Alan Wake 2.
Right.
That's a very Stephen King. We've never really had a video game adaptation of a Stephen King book, but Alan Wake comes pretty close.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I think there's never been a Stephen King video game. Does anybody know of anything?
I think you probably, if anyone here knows, you would.
Yeah.
It feels
So,
like there
yeah.
should have been one of the Mist, doesn't it? You know, like there
Yeah.
should have been one of the Mist, and there should have been a Shining one too. But yeah, no.
But
Um,
instead, The Mist was a very different game.
Yeah.
And YST.
I'm gonna
And
link
very
in the show
frustrating.
notes. I'm gonna link in the show notes to the free cosmic horror games
Yeah.
from last year. You gave me that link. I'll share that with everyone. And
Yeah, there's
I'll-
some worthwhile games there, and you can play them in 5 minutes.
Okay, cool.
So
Yeah, so you don't have to spend any money. And I'll link to the 2023 Cosmic Horror Jam as well. Were there any other games you wanted to mention?
I guess that's it. We'll talk about the one that you sent me the link to later, right?
Yeah, which one was that?
HPL Rising, was that the name of it?
Yeah, Narya
Yeah.
Uprising, something like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna have that developer on with you sometime in the next couple of weeks, and we'll talk to him. But you're enjoying the
Okay.
game so far, right?
Yeah, it's a solo text-based RPG.
Okay.
So fun game.
The other thing that Alan, excuse me, is kind enough to be doing for me, if you go to the Lovecraft Easing website, click on Lovecraftian Games, you'll see there's I've temporarily taken it down because we're revamping it. When I say we, I mean the guy who knows what he's doing, which is Alan. And we'll have that up. The goal is this month, and whatever works best for Alan, but the goal is this month. So check back there periodically, and you'll find a nice list, and they'll be hyperlinked. So anyway, anything else, guys?
I can think of.
I watched the it's not a video game, but just I watched the Gamera series. I don't know if you guys talked
Yeah.
about that last week.
The what series? Sorry.
Gamera
Gamera?
Rebirth.
Gamera, friend of children. Damn it, Davis! What is wrong with you?
I've drawn a blank.
I'm 3 episodes into that, and the monster action's great. The kids have some adult language I was not expecting.
That's hysterical. That is
they're-
like they talk the way the 12-year-olds in my experience talk.
Like they're dropping F-bombs and shit, and you're an asshole. And I'm like, it's like Gamera, friends of little kids, and little kids are pricks.
Little kids have changed.
Yeah.
I don't want to ruin it for you, but I got to like the end of the 3rd episode, and I was like, okay, but
Yeah.
and then it goes batshit crazy.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy cow, this actually okay. I'm I'm in. So
That's their new blurb. It goes
magic. It's
batshit
like that
crazy.
Otsuichi thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're dropping the F-bombs. Gamera.
The bronze, is this comparable like to the Rebirth of Mothra trilogy?
You know what? I got to be honest.
You've
I
never
don't
seen.
remember if I've seen that one.
Oh,
Mothra was. I'm sorry, my dog just.
What are you doing with your life?
No, it's it's Gamera is really good. Like the kids are a little. They're not as bad as they could be.
Alright.
They're not that annoying. Once you get to the monster action, it looks excellent. If you've ever seen the trilogy from the 90s, like Gamera looks like that. He looks
Yeah.
really cool. And they've updated some of the classic monsters because if you've gone back to the original ones, it's definitely an improvement.
And interestingly, have you noticed that the soundtrack, when Gamera appears, Gamera's theme is definitely influenced by the Pacific Rim.
It's metal.
Yeah,
He's on the scene.
Yeah, it's definitely got that. When in Pacific Rim, when the Jaegers are getting ready to kick some kaiju ass, it's the same kind of same. It's different enough, I'm sure, for copyright purposes, but we know what's going on. We know what's going on.
Mike,
yeah.
Does Toho now own Gamera?
No, I don't think so. I think that's still Dayu or whatever it was.
I thought I heard that somewhere along the lines they merged.
Well, this series doesn't have the, Toho always has it does not have that. So
yeah, the shining like sunrise type thing. No,
Okay.
if they did, they'd probably job them out to Godzilla. Because people like fans have always wanted to see the two of them go at it. And I think like Toho has a clause like Godzilla doesn't get beat. Like literally. It's in the contracts when like Americans are handling the movies.
Right.
So what do you think is
Instead of
the,
a no nudity clause, it's a don't get beat clause. Right?
there's a
Always
full
win
nudity clause.
Yeah.
Godzilla's always naked. What do you think of the trailer for -1?
I think it looks really good.
Yeah,
It looks like it's basically a retelling of the original one,
right.
which is definitely the best. I love that movie.
Yeah.
And it just looks really good. It's not a man in the suit CGI, but it's very faithful to the man in the suit.
Yeah.
So but
yeah, there's something weird too that's going on with the monster will never forgive us. And I'm like, dude, it's eating you. Stop. But
it's set in the same time period too. It's right after World War II.
Yeah, it's like crushing everything, and they're like, "We're so sorry, Godzilla," and I'm like, "Come on, people, like,
We disrespected your culture.
exactly,
Godzilla.
yeah, we deserve this." No, you didn't. No one deserves a giant monster. Well, in this case,
Really, Godzilla 2000. When he's like, they're like, Godzilla's inside each one of us, and he's like blowing up the city because he's celebrating defeating Orga. And I'm like,
right,
are
exactly.
you guys happy about that?
There's that one guy. There's that one guy at the end on top of the skyscraper that just screams his name and he just blasts him.
Right,
It's fucking amazing.
but that's good. That's he's in every one of us. He's gonna like burst out like the alien kind of thing.
You know what? I think that's the one that they're releasing in theaters on November 1st. Godzilla 2000. You can go see it on the big screen. Check it out.
Might have to do that for old time's sake.
No, there is something, I'd never seen Killer Clowns on the big screen.
We're back to this.
And we are, John. I'm gonna go back to the things I know. But it was really fun to watch it on the big screen. And the same thing with Godzilla. I would love to.
Did you hear like a rasping sound behind you as your daughter is sharpening the knife she's going to use?
Yes. that sound you hear in the background.
What is that noise?
It's not the dryer, it is the rasping of the machete.
You're like, what are you doing with those drones? And they're like trying to like packing explosives or whatever. Can this drone carry a knife?
Daddy, what does this shiv mean?
Now,
Have you seen Bob's Burgers, Pete?
Yes.
Is your daughter Louise? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Okay. Now, last month we went and we saw Destroy All Monsters.
Oh, nice.
And the problem with that is that you can now see every friggin' line, every piece of fishing wire, every wire. It's all really, really visible
because it was so seamless to begin with.
Yeah.
The thing about Godzilla 2000, though, if I'm remembering correctly, isn't that the one where they have the big flying saucer that comes in and it
Yep.
destroys the building for it? That movie is it's a response, right, to the American Godzilla and also to Independence Day. It's like they were just like, fuck you guys, you screwed it up, and so we're going to take down your version of Godzilla, and we're also going to take down your big flying saucer, because there's the same scene, right, where it shoots the building and the building blows out the same way
Yeah.
it does in Independence Day.
All I
So-
know is if Capitol Records building doesn't get destroyed, it's not a monster movie, right?
What was the Godzilla movie? It was the last one they did before they put him to sleep for 10 years. Like basically where he fights everybody. They had
Final Wars, was it?
yeah.
Final Wars is set like in the near future, and yeah.
Oh,
They-
and Zilla is in that one. Yeah.
Yeah, he lasts like 2 seconds.
For like 5
Yeah,
seconds.
and there's like space ninjas, like the bad guys are, and there's a big lobster, and it's like, come on, people, the lobster, come on.
Well, this sounds very highbrow, but
You know who
yeah,
You know who needs a redesign is Anguillus. Anguillus
Yeah.
needs a
Yeah.
everybody else has
Yeah.
gotten upgrades.
He's just a guy on his knees in a rubber
Yeah.
suit. I just can't get past that.
Let's maybe rephrase that.
Yeah. He might be more interesting that way.
There was actually an interesting, a pretty good graphic novel series called Godzilla: The Half-Century War.
Yeah.
Which has lovely art and which did a pretty decent job at a lot of the classic monsters. And it presents, Godzilla comes out after the Second World War, and then the next half century of these monsters erupting out of the earth. And it was a really fascinating, sort of attempt to do what Watchmen does, right? What if this really happened? So that what if this happened in the real world? So some cities have just been leveled by these monsters meeting to destroy them. It's worth having a look at.
yeah, that does.
What,
actually
you
sound-
mean the world doesn't automatically reset after each movie?
Wait till you get to the end of this.
Could you imagine the guy in Tokyo who's responsible for rebuilding the subway system?
Oh my
Oh,
god.
Jesus.
It's fixed.
He needs to make a cameo in the movie where like the subway goes down and he's like, not again.
Do you remember like Saturday Night Live? I think it was Saturday Night Live did a skit where it was the opening of one of the Dark Knight movies, and there's a guy and he's like laying all the tiles on the roof of the church, and he's like, finally my life's work is done, and the Batmobile thing just like roars across it and scattering the tiles all over the place.
In Infinite Crisis, DC's Infinite Crisis, in Japan, apparently this old superheroes on TV talking about these young punk superheroes. He's basically saying something along the lines of, all the superheroes did their part in my day. And he's basically goes on about their main job was fighting huge monsters. That was the Japan superhero job.
Well, it's
Godzilla's
funny if
crossing over with DC Comics this month.
Oh,
Yeah,
no kidding.
that's true.
Oh yeah, I did see that. There, in the Marvel Godzilla, back in the late 70s, I guess it was, one of the interesting things was how he rarely tussled with superheroes. He did a couple of times, but it was because he came into their turf. There was no, Iron Man's like, I heard there was some weird stuff going on out west, but I don't know.
Yeah, it was the Shield helicarrier that was responsible for tracking.
Shield was dealing with all this stuff, and whenever like comes into San Francisco and the champions have to deal with them, and Nick Fury is out of his mind. This was old white Nick Fury is like out of his mind at these guys getting in the way. It's interesting how much that's changed. Our perspective on that has changed, that you bring those two together, and of course Superman is going to leave Metropolis to deal with Godzilla because that's what Superman does.
Batman has a giant mecha too. It's in the promotional art.
Of course
Yeah.
he does.
I haven't seen King Kong in the promotional art yet though.
But and there's a little blip where Wonder Woman calls him out on it when they're having the mecha. She's like, you've been preparing for this for like 20 years.
Batman's like, no.
John,
on the off chance,
Speaking of Godzilla though, before we get off of it, John, you actually got this, right?
Oh, I did. I haven't read it yet, but
Neither
that
have
is
I.
on my
Haven't had a
CBR
chance.
pile. Yeah.
Godzilla and Godzilla Raids Again.
It's
Okay.
the screenwriter for the first two movies. But he actually, after the first movie came out, he released the two novellas that are based on those. So this is the first time it's been in English ever. It just got
It's
released.
from like a university press or something like that. I
University of
think.
Minnesota Press.
Yeah,
That's insane.
which I kind of love.
Yeah.
I love that they're like, how are we Derrida or Godzilla?
We've got to have a scholarly approach to Godzilla.
Yeah. Publish or perish, John. You know.
Publish your perish indeed. Publish
So
or get kaiju'd.
Hashtag tenure.
so
Yeah, but the funny thing is that
Nice.
there's some professor sitting there going, yeah, that was my coup. This is my life's work. I got Godzilla and Godzilla Raids Again published in English.
You know, and that's
And you know-
And you made a
I
lot of people
salute
happy.
you, sir.
sorry, Bridget, what?
No, I said that's awesome.
Yeah, I'd be proud of that.
So the name of the book is The Family Condition. If you haven't read it, I hope we've convinced you to do so. And as I said, if you're a Kindle person, it's currently only $2.99 on Kindle.
And
But
you can
I-
look forward to Cody's Godzilla fan fiction, which is coming out shortly.
Exactly,
Oh yeah.
exactly. But in a Centipede Press edition, so only 100 of you out there can afford it. So,
Yeah, exactly. And then Pete's also he's doing Godzilla versus Dorian Gray. So it's
No, it's Godzilla.
it's a very
versus
it's
the
a very
Animated.
it's
Yeah,
a very
Godzilla
Godzilla
short
versus
story.
Reanimator.
That'll be a Godzilla love story.
Oh, have
Uh,
you read that? That is actually pretty. There is a Godzilla love story.
Is there? No,
Yeah.
I haven't.
I think it's called Gojiro, and by, or is it Jago by is it Kim Newman?
It's not
Oh,
Chuck
it's-
Tingle,
it-
right?
Are you asking us?
It sounds like something
You
Kim
said it
Newman
like
would have done.
any of
Yeah,
us
I
are
think
gonna know.
Yeah, I think it's Jago, Jago by Kim Newman.
Somebody beat me to it.
I'll have to
There's
find that
always
out.
room. There's a lot of love left in Godzilla. Let's
Oh,
just
yeah.
put it that way.
Kolchak
There's,
versus
you know,
You
Godzilla.
can tide each one of us.
I'm telling you, there's a giant monster out there, and nobody believes me. Get out of here, Kolchak. You're drunk again. I was sure there was a giant monster stalking the city.
In Chicago. Yeah. So it's the family
Paramus.
condition, and the aching plane will be out in a few weeks or a month
So
or so,
yeah, it
right?
should be mid-October, maybe the 24th. Yeah.
All right. Well, next week we've got Robert Levy, Matt Maxwell, The Following Week with Emma J. Gibbon, and then our Halloween episode, and then Victor LaValle, and then Trevor Henderson. So got some great guests coming up. And
Yeah.
thanks. Yeah. Sorry. Oh, and thanks so much for being here today, Cody.
Oh, thank you for having me. This is a huge
Absolutely.
honor, privilege, because I watched the show, so it's been surreal, all these being part of it.
But
Well,
after you've been part of it now, you're like, actually, yeah, it's kind of disappointing. Yeah.
yeah,
Until it got to Godzilla, that was awesome. But
I get that all the time. So anyway, thanks for being here. By the way, thanks for being a patron.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's patrons who keep me doing this. Otherwise,
that's our clue to defeating him, everybody. Are you
That's
listening to
right.
what he's saying?
somebody with my
Not
skills
paid.
would have no problem at all getting a top flight job in the housekeeping or food industry, you know. So if I wasn't doing this,
Davis, get back on the fryer.
no, I
So,
want two,
okay,
two
so-
fries with that.
Just to correct myself, it is Gojiro by Mark Jacobson.
But that wasn't even close.
No kidding.
I kind of remember that. Was it a mass market paperback?
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
a lizard made gigantic by atomic bomb testing, and a recently comatose boy whose family has been killed 9 years earlier in the Hiroshima blast venture forth to discover their identities in a nuclear age.
Well,
Look at that.
it's a giant monster. I mean, the first guy's, it's pretty clear.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anyway, thanks, Cody. Thanks, guys, for being here. Pick up Haunted Nights and read Lost in the Dark by John Langan.
read the family condition first.
Yes. All right.
Oh, I'm
But
definitely
it-
about Haunted Nights. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, if you've read it and you're waiting for the aching plane, read Haunted Nights. So, and skip to the almost end, which editors hate for you to do, and read Lost in the Dark. So anyway, thanks for being here, everybody, and we will see you next week.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.